go. What is up, everybody? This is Anthony with VR365. Welcome to another episode of our show. Today is April 28th. It is Sunday. It is 11:30 a.m. And I am joined by a very special guest. I have the developer of Primordian, Jay of Stonepunk Studios. Jay, so good to have you. What is going on?
Hey, Anthony. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
How's it
And
going?
hey, good. And hey, everyone in chat.
Yep. Early on in this interview here, I will ask chat to keep an eye on our audio levels and just let me know if I need to turn Jay up or turn him down or anything like that, and we'll go ahead and deal with that as we go along. But let me go ahead and get my stuff together here. Some information. Okay, so basically what I was thinking that we could do today, I'm going to turn my camera just a little bit more this way. What I was thinking that we could do today on this particular episode is, I've got millions of questions I could potentially ask you in all kinds of different directions. There's so many possibilities. And rather than trying to force everything into a single interview session, I'm just going to kind of operate with the idea that maybe I'll have to have you on a second time or a third time, and we can cover all the other stuff as well. So that way we can just kind of relax. We can go through whatever we want to go through, and I don't feel like I have to rush into different topics. So we're just going to kind of take it cool like that. But why don't we go ahead and start it off with the very beginning? So
Sounds good.
let's go back to the early days. So one of the things that I did discover, and I didn't know this right away, is I'm assuming you're born and raised in Australia.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Grew up.
you're the first Aussie on this show. There's another guy, Controller Brain. I don't know if you ever saw him in chat, Controller Brain on YouTube.
Yes. Yeah. I pretty much watch every day, and I see all the regular names and stuff. So it's actually kind of strange. It's like I'm watching the show every day, and then all of a sudden it's like a Black Mirror episode or something, like sucked into.
It's Inception is what it is. Because,
Exactly.
one of the things I've been doing is I've been trying to get people to come on this show. Like, I have some favorite podcasters that I've been trying to get to come on this show. I used to listen to a podcast, Bobby Blackwolf, the Bobby Blackwolf Show. Not a VR related show, although he does talk about VR. And I'm hoping to have Bobby Blackwolf next Sunday, a week from today. And I had that guy Alex from Play PSVR. And
Yes.
so
Yeah.
eventually I'm going to get all my favorite podcasters on this show. And it's going to be like this weird thing because I used to listen to them years and years ago. Never would have imagined I'd have them on a show. So
Isn't
it's a
that
cool
cool?
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to Australia. So you grew up in Australia, born and raised, and I imagine at a certain point you discovered the world of video gaming, or maybe you were at some arcades, or do you remember, what are some of the earliest memories maybe you have of this whole interactive medium?
Yeah. Good question. Yeah, I was actually thinking about this last night. So I used to spend tons and tons of time in the arcade after school. And one of my first memories is I remember going to a friend's house, and they had this thing called Intellivision. And I don't know if you remember that one, but I'm not sure if it was before Atari or around the same time as the Atari console. But when I saw that, and that this guy was able to play this baseball game in his lounge room, this is dating me a lot, but I freaked out. I was like, wow, you can do this from home. You don't have to go to the arcade. Because what I would do is pretty much every afternoon after school, I'd either go by myself or with my brother or friends and go to this bowling alley, and we'd play tons of different games, Double Dragon. And so you'd get, 10 guys standing around and would all be trying to get through through Double Dragon. That was a hard game too. I just played that again recently. And what else? Yeah, but there was this one game in particular that I've actually sent you a video of that is interesting, called Rygar, and I don't know if anyone even played this, or there was a Super Nintendo version, I think, of this, but it wasn't quite as good as the arcade one. And Rygar was this strange kind of weird prehistoric world, and interesting creatures, all sorts of, and it was the weirdest thing I'd ever seen. But I loved the game. It was really, really difficult. But one of the greatest memories was that something I never realized, playing through. So I'd go there most afternoons after school and try and beat this thing. And there was this other guy I used to watch, and he was just the master, really good at it. And I watched him play one day, and there's little flying creatures that come along, and he jumped in the air and jumped on its back and went through the entire level without anything touching him. And that kind of blew my mind. Then I realized our games are, there's someone behind that thought of that, and they sat there thinking, they played it enough that they went, well, wouldn't it be cool if you could do this? And that's a long answer, but yeah, that was definitely a moment where I realized I didn't think about how games are constructed, or that you could put personality into them, or you could put that amount of thought into them.
Yeah.
I just thought of it as something you went and chucked your money in and enjoyed it, and I liked their fantastical worlds. But yeah.
Here's Rygar right here, I think. Or this might... you're 7 seconds behind me, so it's going to take a little while for it to show up on you. But I think... Or I don't know if this is Rygar. Yeah, this is Rygar. It's showing up on my screen. And this is a game... I had this game on my Nintendo Entertainment System. At one point, I had a Nintendo Entertainment System. And I only had maybe... over the life of the time that I had the Nintendo Entertainment System, I had probably like 20 games or so. And this is one of the 20. And I really remember squatting down, and you use your shield, you shoot your shield out and smash stuff. And so, yeah.
And it was weird because it had a mix of science fiction and like prehistoric stuff. And it was kind of a blend of a few different styles that you don't see that often. Yeah, but he had these kind of sci-fi shields, and you could upgrade that, and then you could shoot in the air all of a sudden, or swing around or something. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
Hey, really quick on the screen here, it's saying early Primordian influences, and it's showing like some different movies and stuff. Is one of those Jason and the Argonauts? I'm not sure what the other movie was, like at the very beginning.
Oh yeah, there's the Time Machine.
Oh, the Time Machine.
Excuse
okay.
Me. I think it's the '60s version, and then Clash of the Titans, which is.
Oh yeah.
I remember you saying once that this is one of your favorites.
Yeah.
The originals.
I liked the Jason and the skeletons, those stop animation skeletons from Jason and the Argonauts, or whichever one that was. Yeah, that was. Yeah. I love those games.
Love that. I've actually been trying to figure out some ways to get that same look into a game. So like doing that stop motion kind of claymation look.
Yeah.
I think that would be really interesting.
Okay, so your first entry into gaming, you were at the arcades, you saw this guy's intelligent television, and the baseball had I remember because I had an Atari 2600 or an Atari VCS or whatever they call it, and then Intellivision came a little bit later, and Intellivision was like the high end thing, and then ColecoVision was even higher end. And we didn't have Intellivision or ColecoVision, but like the rich kid down the block might have had it, And Intellivision, it had baseball, and it had all 9 players, where like Atari was just a couple of little dudes running around. And so Intellivision was like a big improvement. I do remember that.
That's right.
Do you remember, did you, as you were growing up, did you own any video game consoles? Did your parents at a certain point buy one of these things? Or was it always something you played at someone else's house? Or how did that work?
Yeah, for the longest time, it was just something I had to go to a friend's house to play. And actually, I only knew one guy that had the Atari, and he knew when like 7 or 8 of us would turn up at his house that it was time to get his game system out because none of us had anything. So, but the first thing I got for home was actually the Commodore 64, and that was something. So my dad bought the Commodore 64, and I didn't realize you could even play games on it. I thought it was just because we didn't have any games, you could just type stuff, and I lost interest after about 10 minutes of experimenting with that. And then I was talking to a friend at school, and he said, "Oh, I've got one of those Commodore 64s. I'll check this out." And the next day he bought in a cassette tape, and the tape had all these games written on it. And I thought, because you remember it used to have this little tape drive, and you'd have to put the games in and run the tape drive and get them to load. And he bought me this tape, and I took it home, and it had like a surfing game, some sort of boxing game, and this game called Druids, and a whole bunch of other ones. And since that was the only thing I had, I just played those over and over, and they would crash all the time. But it was there was some cool stuff on there, and so I didn't realize you could actually just like dub a tape and then put it into another one, and yeah, interesting stuff. And that was actually, so I must have been about 14, and that was the first time I got into actually making games, which was accidental pretty much. So I was with my brother, who's about 4 years younger, and we're at this shopping mall, and I saw all these books, and it said like, make your own game. And instead of teaching you how to code or anything, there were these books you could buy of a game. It would be like if you could go and buy a book today that said the code of God of War, or the code of something. It's basically the code for the game was enough to fit in a book that was 100 pages or something. And so you could buy these books, and we bought one called Terra Cognita. I think that was what it was called. Yeah, it was a little space flying game. And it must have been like a school holidays, because we spent probably a week. He would sit there and read the code to me, and I would just sit there and type it. And then he'd read it out, and then we'd try and run it. And then we got it working eventually. And then we changed like the spaceship to be pink and things like that. And it was that was super fun.
So do you think that was like the key moment for you? Because I got to imagine at a certain point, because you started screwing around with these games, you started trying to make your own at a certain point, and something had to be the Kickstarter to that. Or was it some experience that you tried? And like, was there a light bulb that went off at a certain point where it was like, you know what, I'm going to actually make these things? Or were you just kind of randomly screwing around?
Yeah, no, good. Yeah, it was randomly screwing around pretty much. I actually forgot about it for years. Yeah, I forgot about games for a long time because I would still play them. Like I really got into the NES and N64, and I forgot about the fact that you could actually make games for them because it just seemed way too complicated. And to be honest, it's still way too complicated, but it seemed way too complicated from like that Commodore 64 on. As I started playing Nintendo games and things like that, I just put the idea out of my head. I was more into other stuff, kids stuff, I guess, and it didn't really come back into my thought that I could do this, create games, until it was Half-Life, the first Half-Life.
Okay. So
And
many years later, like a long
yeah,
time later, really.
yeah. And I was still playing games every day. Not so much PC games though, just mainly console games. And then I finally got a computer, and I hadn't had a home computer for the longest time. And it was the original Half-Life. I just love that. I mean, everybody loves that game. I think everyone loves it. But I played that. The deathmatch, the multiplayer, was my first kind of introduction into multiplayer games, and I got so into that I would play that, after work every night till like all hours of the morning. and meeting groups of people and kind of join up with them. And at the same time, I kind of rediscovered things like Photoshop, and I've always been into art, and painting and music and stuff. And I never thought about sort of putting the two together until I was playing. So I'd play with this like clan we had, and every single night, and it was cool because you'd like the six of us or whatever would join up, and it's bad because you never end up getting much sleep because one of them's always like, no, I'm not. We should stay up. We should keep playing. Um, Years of that, maybe 3 years we did that, and but what was the interesting moment that got me back into thinking about making games was we were playing and I saw a different character running around all of a sudden. Like there was someone that looked like a clown, and then there was someone else that looked like a shark or something, and I couldn't figure out how they were getting these different character models. And so I, asked them, and then I researched stuff on the internet, and it was just a timing thing. I think more stuff was available on the internet, like mods were starting to be made. They probably were a lot earlier than this, but I'd kind of missed out on a lot of stuff. But I think Counter-Strike had just come out, and I was reading about how this group of people took Half-Life and then made this other game called Counter-Strike, and it was really fascinating. So I pretty much started by trying to figure out how did those guys make those other player models that I was seeing jumping around everywhere, and how do I make them for our team? So I got Photoshop and some modeling programs and started learning the modeling programs and made us different. Some pretty stupid, but some cool. I think I've got pictures of them still too. Little characters that just our team could use.
So wait, so this year, because like when Half-Life came out, was that like 1998 or something?
Yeah.
So this was like
Early
1999 or so. All this is kind of going on that you're thinking about this.
It's probably still 98. Like it wasn't that long
Oh,
after it came out that I'd been playing for a while, and I started thinking, oh, I want to get into making this stuff. Yeah. Yeah, really
because
just,
well, the question I have, see, I'm looking at like you gave me some notes of when you like started some different things. And one of the notes that I have here is, you moved to America. You joined Blizzard in 2006. So that was obviously a huge moment in your life, kind of a game-changing moment in your life.
yeah.
But it's kind of it's amazing to me anyways that like 1999 you were really early on in this stuff, and then just like 5, 6, 7 years later, bam, you're working at Blizzard. Is how like because you started out as an artist, right?
Yes.
Mostly.
Yeah. Yep.
And when I think of an art, like I don't know how video game projects actually work. I don't have the inside track. I've heard different things. I've seen documentaries and stuff, but I don't really know how the process works. And when I think of an artist, I don't think that that's the guy that's like programming how high this character jumps and how fast this character runs and stuff. I think of the artist as the guy like doing the artwork, and then he gives that information to the programmer, which then takes that information and kind of like makes the game. But at some point you were actually like doing the real programming, or no, or maybe not. I don't know. Can you elaborate on that?
No, you're right. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting, and it depends on the time period too. Like things have changed so much that um, it is possible to do a lot of the steps of the process for one person to do that. It really just depends what you're interested in. I think is like maybe even like what we were talking about with the Half-Life stuff. You were forced to kind of learn, oh, I need to write this little text script in order to see the character in the game, or you had to basically start understanding stuff you didn't particularly even care about, possibly like what a. And I think that was just it. I just was really um, dedicated to getting something from one end to the other, kind of thing. And and today, like depending on what size game you're working on, the specialties can be so like you could have one artist that is just interested in lighting, or one artist, someone that's just interested in, so like an animator, for example, or a character artist. would work really closely with the animators, but also with the programmers and technical artists and designers and so on, because of the technology, and it's so complex that you really need to be able to understand what's happening at every end of not just what you're working on, but what everyone else is working on. Um, it's I don't know if that answers.
Oh
I don't
no,
know if that
I
covers what
mean,
we were talking about, but
it's all interesting. What, we're
yeah,
obviously going to like morph into other little things, but let's go back to, okay, so you started making mods, basically is how you really started, because it said, like, I'm looking here, it says Discover, Doom, Half-Life, Unreal Tournament, started making mods for them. So that's kind of how you got into it. And then I have here that your first job, like your first real job in this industry, was as an artist making an MMO for the original Xbox. Do you know what you, like, was that like 1999 that you got hired there? Was it 2000? Do you remember?
I can't remember. It must be about 2000. Yeah,
Okay. Did
something.
that MMO never come out? Because I
It
know there
did.
was a number of them that never came out on Xbox.
Yeah, it didn't, and it was a shame too because it was really fun.
Are
Like it
you
was
allowed to say what it is or no? Or do
yeah,
you
I
remember?
think so. I remember. Yeah, um, the game was called Citizen Zero, and it was a they before I started joined the company. Yeah, they'd been working on it for years, and it was interesting kind of science fiction, open world. A lot of the stuff was really ahead of its time. Like you could even down to things like the Xbox controller having voice chat and all of those sort of things. But playing an MMO on a console was pretty cool. Like it was good because it was quite a large team, so we'd be able to play test every day. And this is my first job in the industry too, so I was really learning a lot, and I was just super excited to be at work every day, and I still am. But
And
it's
were you in Australia when this was happening?
yes,
Okay.
yeah,
So you were in Australia. Was the company located in Australia, or were you like doing your work remotely? Oh, that was pretty early for that, right? So they probably were
yeah.
there. Okay.
Yeah, that they were in Australia, and they're still there, and but there's not many. Well, I should maybe there are a lot. There weren't as many options for game companies to work at because, like you said, like it was pretty early on, so working remotely was kind of tricky. Like I remember it was even hard to get like an MP3 of a song from one computer to another and stuff.
Yeah.
So um,
Was
yeah,
it?
that
I'm sorry. I'll
I know
sometimes I'm just going to cut in. But were you like working on something that never came out? I know this isn't the first time that, I mean, this isn't the only time that that's happened to you, right? It's happened a number of times for you. Is it frustrating, like, to like spend a number of years of your life you're working on this project? I mean, I know you're getting a paycheck and you're earning a living, so at the end of the day maybe it doesn't matter that much what ultimately happens with what you're working on, but I'm sure there's some part of you that wants to see it like actually come out, and then you could tell somebody, hey, I did that little part right there, and it never comes out. Like, how frustrating is that?
definitely. Yeah, it was. I was kind of sad about that. Yeah, because being the first thing that I worked on, I had all these dreams that it was gonna, oh wow, what's someone's gonna actually play this one day. That was, and by the way, like when I remember on my first day turning up to work, that I couldn't believe they had a computer for me. I was like, this is my computer. Like I get to use this thing, and so it was everything was eye opening, and I thought, um, I was just thinking about how amazing it'll be, like this little thing. Or I started working on a lot of environment, like building swamps and cities and all sorts of things with and I still do this, but as building, I remember I'd stay back really late at work at night, just imagining what someone playing through it, like, oh, maybe they'll go up here, maybe they'll go here. I'll hide this little thing here that could be interesting. Do all of this stuff, um, and so when you put a lot of thought into that, and then you realize no one's ever going to play that stuff. It's yeah, that was. but it was a good lesson, It didn't stop me from thinking that way, but it was more that that stuff can happen, and it didn't really change anything. It was just like you said, it's a bit kind of frustrating, and but I made a lot of good friends and had a lot of fun doing it. So um, yeah, it was still a good experience. Yeah.
Okay, so at a certain point you left to go to America and to join Blizzard. And that was around 2006. How did that come about? Like, were you employed at this same place that was doing this MMO? Were you still there? Were you somewhere else? Were you like a freelancer guy? How did you end up getting hooked up with Blizzard? Did you just like, was there like some openings that you found out about, you applied for it, or did you have a friend that worked there, or basically anything you could say about how you ended up? Because I'm guessing this was one of the biggest tr- uh, things that ever happened in your entire life. I mean, you've always lived in Australia. Now you're moving to the USA. Blizzard, one of the most well, I mean, they're famous, right? You know, everybody wants to work for Blizzard. How did you end up getting this great opportunity?
um, yeah, it was. You're right. It was really big. It was a big change, lifestyle. Yeah, everything. And I didn't even know what to expect. Having never, I don't think I'd ever been to the States before either. Um, yeah, it came about because uh, I mentioned early on that I worked with my brother and I put the Commodore game together. Well, he also kept going and making games, and he's a level designer. He was a level designer and so on. And we worked together after the MMO thing. We went to another company. We were working on a game for Stargate, and it was going to be for PlayStation 2 and PC. And same thing again, really great group of people, and we had a lot of fun making the game. But for certain reasons, it didn't end up happening. But that also was a really good game
Wait, was that
just to
like the
play.
was that the Ghost game that never came out? Or,
No, no,
that's different. Okay.
I think yeah, a different one. This was right up my alley because it was a first-person shooter, and it was like it had all the components of a game that I would want to play. All the guns, and then you travel through space, and it was sci-fi
Oh,
elements.
Stargate. Stargate. Okay. Yeah.
Stargate,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Stargate.
Um, so that was a bummer that didn't end up happening. But when that kind of closed down, so my brother was working on that game, I was working on the game. Same thing again. We put a lot, well, everyone did put a lot into it, many hours and stuff. And I feel like all of these things were just really good learning experiences. And my brother was working there as well, and we had a friend who was a designer, and he said, and we were all thinking, what are we going to do now? Like, what do we do after this? And he said, well, I'm actually traveling to this. So there's the game developed. There's GDC here, but random, like all over the world, they'll have like Australian GDC, or I think there might have been an Asia Pacific GDC or something. So there was the Australian GDC, and he said, I'm going to that thing, and I have an interview with some people from Blizzard. Do you want me to add your names and see if they'll talk to you guys too? And I said, for sure, yeah, that
Hell
sounds
yeah.
great. Hell yeah. And yeah, so we flew down to Melbourne from because we were in Sydney, and I remember being just ridiculously nervous uh, because uh, they make amazing games, and I was just thinking. Basically, in the interview, I said like it would be awesome to not only work on the games you guys make, but to learn. Just to learn all the skills that uh, that you guys have obviously mastered, and yeah, it was. I guess it was good timing and so on. So yeah, and the short version is we ended up both my brother and I being hired, and so we had to pack up everything and and come over here. And it was just as the original World of Warcraft had kind of taken off. And so when we were starting, I guess the team needed to be ramped up, and we started working on the first expansion, which was called the Burning Crusade. And again, another big learning experience, and total culture shock. And not that it's that much different from Australia, but it was just all the small things you notice. And I didn't have a car for like a year, all
Was
sorts of
this
things.
was this in the LA area? Where were you located?
Oh, this is Orange County
Orange.
area.
Okay. So that's where
So
Blizzard was with that.
right, right, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
And yeah, so that was a big change, and hard for, like, we had to pack up. My wife wasn't, uh, you know, pack up all her things. But our dog come over with us, my brother and his girlfriend at the time, and wife. So it was like six of us, four people and two dogs, and furniture and all sorts of stuff that your whole life pretty much pick it up. And but it was such a great opportunity, and again, I met some of the best. Still have a lot of great friends there, and really fun times. Yeah,
so
well
has
worth.
your permanent residence ever since that time? Have you been basically in the USA, or did you ever, like, were there a couple years where you moved back to Australia, or you've always lived in the USA ever since that time, pretty much?
Oh yeah, just here since, and I really like it here. I love both countries. So
Yeah. Do you
yeah.
visit Australia on a regular basis? Like, do you go back at least once a year or anything like that?
No, I haven't been back for maybe 4 or 5 years, probably,
Wow. Okay.
for quite a while. I like surfing a lot, so I miss that. There's good surfing in California, but I do miss some of that at home.
Yeah. All right. Well, okay. So you started, and unfortunately, I know nothing about World of Warcraft. I never really played World of Warcraft, so I'm a terrible person to be interviewing you from that time frame. But so you're at Blizzard, and I'm sure you had to like learn the culture of how Blizzard does what they do. And that was probably valuable for you because they obviously have something that they're doing right there. They've been doing something right for a while. And then you started working on a secret project, Project Titan, which of course, everybody's heard about that since. We've known about it forever. And here's another project that never ultimately saw the light of day, or did it? Because it kind of like morphed right at the very end there. But what about that? Is there? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot you can't say about that. But what were those years like?
Yeah, there's you're right. There's a lot that I can't talk about, but they in terms of like best amazing experiences. Yeah, doing all sorts of weird, things I never thought I would do. But a lot of it was just meeting people that again learn from, and I learned so much about thinking about making games, and how to put them together, and just watching people, and yeah, really, but also how to get into, like, sometimes we would spend there'd be a period of say 6 months which you'd call like we were really focusing on finishing something. And I remember I was building a lot of the exterior environments, and they have a lot of character in World of Warcraft. Or people like to uh, people will journey around them, doing all sorts of things. And so you can afford to spend the time to give, like, oh, this little hill goes over here, and this is going to happen here. You can give a lot of story elements to the scenes. And I remember getting so into that I would come home and I would think about, oh, I couldn't wait to get back to work the next day. Like, what? Oh, I've just got to put this finishing touch to this thing, and working with pretty much everyone. And I know it's still like this. Like everyone there is like that. Like, I can't wait to do this or think of this, because they're just thinking about what people are going to experience when you're playing. So meeting, it was mainly being able to find a group of people that all felt the same. That was that was pretty cool. And I think I learned a lot about, say, the importance of colors and shapes, and just there were people who are really experts in certain things that stuff I never thought about. So it was, yeah, very eye-opening. And then what I think some of the best things were being able to do things like go to BlizzCon and talk to people who, when you find out like the way the experiences, like I remember talking to this three generations of people. There was a grandmother and the daughter and their kids, and these three generations that all played together in a guild, or they formed their own guild. And the grandmother, I think, might have been 80 something, and she was the one that got the other ones into it, and that was cool. So yeah, a lot of unique things I would have never got to say meet those people or hear about that stuff. Yeah.
So Activision, obviously, they acquired Blizzard at a certain point. I don't remember what year that was. Do you know off the top of your head what year that was?
No, it does. It I don't remember, but it does. It's
Was that during your time there, though? I mean, when it
I
happened?
think so. Yeah, I think so.
Did they, I mean, again, you might not be able to speak to this too much, but were they mostly hands off as far as like they just let Blizzard be Blizzard pretty much?
Yeah, it's hard to. Yes,
Mostly,
but yeah,
maybe, or.
no, that's why I was saying I don't really remember, because to me nothing ever changed. It was all always the same. So, but it's yeah, really no effect. It was very. It's a good culture. Yeah.
I think Activision probably realized, look, these guys know what they're doing. Like, we don't really need to screw with them very much. I'm sure they probably wanted you guys to um, have a greater output, a yearly output, more products, more SKUs, but they didn't really want to mess with like the core of what you guys are doing, I have to imagine. Okay, so why don't we get into VR a little bit? So
Yes.
what about in the very like let's before we get into like the modern VR, which you started to discover around like 2014 with the DK1, what about in the 90s? Because you were around at that time, and I can tell you myself personally, I had like the old magazines from back in that time, Game Pro, Electronic Gaming Monthly, and all these different things. And virtual reality was something that we heard about a little bit. And you like Sega at one point. Sega was going to have these VR goggles at one point. Jaguar, the Atari Jaguar,
Mm.
was going to have VR goggles at one point. Of course, the Virtual Boy actually came out. I don't know if we really consider that VR, but that actually happened. Do you remember back to that time in the 90s? Was it something that you were aware of at all, or was that something that you didn't even like notice that stuff?
No, I didn't. I must have missed all of that somehow. I didn't notice any of it, and the only experience I can remember is there was a place called Sega World that was in Sydney for a while, and it was a massive Sega themed a theme park type thing. It was just a huge arcade, and I remember going to that just once with my brother and about six of his friends, and so this was the closest virtual reality experience I had, and it wasn't even it. There wasn't even a HMD or anything. It was um, these pods that you would get in,
Like the
and we all,
BattleTech or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, kind of like that. We all jumped in, and then a round would start, and we could actually see each other, but the screen was all around you, and you could see each other flying through this kind of Tron-like grid thing and shoot each other, and then and when it finished, it would give you a printout of at this point. We all gave ourselves weird nicknames, so it would say like at this point, Conan the whatever destroyed so and so, and I've still got that little piece of paper. That was fun. But yeah, for VR, I didn't really know anything about it until I saw something about the Rift Kickstarter, and that was it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, why don't you tell me about that? Like how did you become aware of VR when it did come back? You just heard something about the Rift Kickstarter and you started paying attention to it, or I mean, how
Yeah.
did you
No.
get so interested in it? Because it seems like you probably got pretty interested in it pretty fast.
Yeah. Definitely. And that's why I love watching the show every day and reading everything everyone puts in chat, and because I feel like somehow I got really uh, so addicted to it or sucked in by the technology and by the possibilities that knowing there's another group of people that also feel the same and being able um, to chat with everyone and just listen to you go through all the news and everything is a great thing. So yeah, in case I forget, thank you so much for the show and doing it every day.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah.
No problem.
um,
Yeah,
where
go
was
ahead.
it?
Go ahead.
Yes. So yes. So what happened with how I really got into VR was uh, I was at work and there was a friend of mine that said I bought one. He was a kickstart. He was a backer and he got the DK1, and everyone said bring it in. We try it. So he eventually bought it in, and we all kind of took turns and spent 5 minutes, and it was Doom 3, and we were looking at Doom 3, and I didn't know what to expect, but it didn't have, from what I recall, it didn't have any head tracking. I think the DK1 had no head tracking. So you all know those moments when you lose tracking and your stomach is going to come out of your mouth, sort of thing. It was like that the entire time, but and I think felt sick for like 3 days after this. But it was such yeah, it changed everything. As soon as I saw this, and I was looking around, and it was at the beginning of Doom 3, and you could kind of look up this big rock shaft, and there was a little ship hanging above that has gas coming down. I walked up some stairs and I think I eventually got into this cafeteria, and you could play that turkey punching game and stuff. But I must have played for 5 or 10 minutes, but I couldn't stop thinking about it since then. Yeah, since that. And,
Okay. And
and then
then
I saw, yeah, sorry.
oh, I just so you at a certain point you bought a DK2 and then you started screwing around making games for that.
Yeah. I immediately went home and started. And the funny thing is the Oculus, I think when they first started, I know they're probably not here anymore, but they were on my drive home. Like I could see the building on my way home from work, and I was thinking, oh, if I could just go and knock on the door and say, can I have one of those things? And but as soon as I got home, I was like, okay, I'm going to pre-order this DK2, and then I got it like 2 weeks later, and started messing around with making things for it and making little worlds for it and stuff. But the most amazing thing to me was when I got that and it had the head tracking, and it was the first time I tried it. And I don't know if anyone else remembers this. This scene was a simple. Do you remember this thing too? It was like a little table, and I think there were some cards stacked on it, and a paper cup, a little cup, and a plant, and then a grid, and you could just look off to the left and the right, and that was it. That was their little demo scene, and you had to play everything seated. There was no standing stuff. Um, but to me, that scene was one of the best things I've ever seen. I would just sit there and look off into the distance, because it wasn't what the scene was. It was like the potential. It's like this. It's unlimited. You could do anything out there and that way and that way, and that was the moment, I think, when I thought, yeah, it's like a different canvas. When you've been working in flat something for forever, and you've been, and I feel like it's been such a long time. You're really to have all the possibilities open up to something so endless was pretty mind blowing. So I just decided from then on that's all I want to do for work, because it's like a different. And when I say work, it's not really work. I just enjoy it so much. It's more I would be doing it anyway, sort of thing.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
at the time, I mean, you were working for Blizzard, and I imagine you were probably making some good money working for Blizzard, and I imagine you were well taken care of in terms of like all the fringe benefits and all the other things that happen as far as that goes. But you decided, you know what, this VR stuff, man, I got to do this. I got to do VR. You decided to make your own company and go into VR, and obviously the hours that you would need to pour into that meant that you would have to leave Blizzard. Was this like, did you talk to your wife about this? Did you sit down and like, man, I think I'm going to do this. I think I'm really going to do this.
Mhm.
And I mean, what was that whole process like?
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about this for a while either, but I'd also since making that first game such a long time and working on the Half-Life stuff and things, I started writing down like a list of games I wanted to make, like 10 or 20, and really going through it. And I thought, even if it takes like 20 years, I'm just going to keep writing notes and until I get. And I was just constantly having ideas for games anyway. So I was doing the character. Right, I think it was a convergence of a whole bunch of things, like the tools and the technology that there is today make it possible for someone by themselves to make a game. Not that it wasn't possible before; it's just getting easier and easier, faster and faster. And then a lot of the work I was actually doing at work was to do with creating pipelines and things that make creating games faster and better and look better and all, a lot of very technical stuff, as well as the art thing. So it was a combination of I started thinking, well, I did some calculations. It's like if I want to make these 10 or 20 games and they're going to take me like 2 years each, I better get started. Like I better actually do something about it. And so, but at the same time, the VR was that was it. I decided, yeah, that's all I want to work in. I have these games I've got to make. I think I feel kind of like I could try and do it, and that's been a huge learning experience as well. Um, so yeah, it was just timing. It was everything coming together, and it was a bit scary, yeah, and stupid maybe, possibly. I don't know if it's even still a good idea, but I enjoy it. So, and really, I started thinking to myself is I just want to be able to pay my rent, and as long as I can do that and enjoy what I'm doing, then I'm happy.
Yeah, yeah.
So it came down to that, and yeah, I did talk to my wife about it, and it helps to have a very supportive wife who she's great because I work pretty much 6 days a week here, and I have all my stuff set up and um, morning till like all hours of the morning, but it's not work. I just have a good routine of like do technical stuff in the day and artwork at night, and um, that's a long answer. Sorry, I tend to ramble, but it was an interesting time, and it wasn't even a hard decision though. It was like, okay, time to do this. Yeah.
Okay, so when you started Stonepunk Studios, so it's just you, like there's no well, I mean, one of the things that we hear is like Primordian was made by one guy, so that's you, right? But I imagine like you didn't do everything. Like there must have been some people you brought in to do this little thing or that little thing, right?
No, I pretty much just set myself the task of if if I don't know how to do it, stop. And that's why it's taken so long to make this game. Is like if I don't know how to do something, stop and figure it out and learn it. And that's why stuff like this may not have been possible like 10 years ago to do because we didn't have YouTube and tutorials. And it's amazing what you can find out there. You have some random problem with something, someone has figured it out and someone's done it and been good enough to put it online for you. And that's that's something I want to get better at because I've learnt lots of little things. I've been hopeless with actually sharing any information, and but that's one of the that was one of my things. Is just even if I eventually end up hiring people and I have a good team together and stuff, I want to know how to do whatever they're going to work on.
So you did the
So,
audio? You did the audio?
oh, yeah, pretty much a lot of the sound, the audios, and then I have for the music. So if I took Primordian, for example, I love making music as well. So I started doing the tracks, and then this is the one area that I did get a lot of help with, which was fantastic. And ever since then, I've I've thought about sound differently. But I loved sound and audio. And there was a guy emailed me randomly and said, I really like the look of the world, and can you send me, this is before the game came out, can you send me a version to just try it out? So I sent it to him, and he played it for a little while, and he said, my brother makes music, I think he would like this, can I send it to him? So anyway, and so this guy Vince got back to me and he said, I made this music track that I think would fit in your world, and I listened to it, and it was pretty cool. And so um, we just became friends. Like we'd chat on the phone every day, and he put me onto this app called Telegram where we could just leave, because it's a weird thing. Talking about music is it's strange. It's like talking about how something tastes, you know? It's like you can't really do it. Like if you say, or especially not email it, like make the bit that goes boom, boom, bing, boom,
Yeah, yeah. No,
sound
I
like that.
know. You got to hear
Yeah.
it. You got to say, "Oh, that's what I like," or "That's what I don't like." And
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And so he's awesome. Like he got the feel. Like I was trying to describe to him, like every level in the game needs to have this feeling, and basically every instrument shouldn't sound like it could appear on Earth. Like it's if it's a don't have a piano or whatever, have it's an instrument made of like dinosaur skin or whatever it is. If you think of it that way, maybe try and get the sounds like that. And it took a few months of like going back and forth, and then all of a sudden he just hit it. Like he hit this certain sound, and I was like, that's it, okay, let's. And then I would build levels. I usually build the levels at night, and I'd make him videos, send it to him, and the next day or so he would send a song back that was just perfect for that. So that was exciting because I'd never really let go of anything, you know, like pulled back and said, okay, I think it'd be fun for someone else to hear their ideas or just to get their input. And so ever since then, I've been working with Vince on and all the new things I've been working on. He's also done music for, and yeah, it's a great working process. So I wanted him to experience VR and because he's really into the emotion of things, and that's basically what we're talking about. I was just trying to get scenes that you walk through, and actually I talked to Paradise Decay about this a while ago, is how VR is so different, where you can get memories and so much more emotion out of your experiences. And I think music is and audio is such a huge part of that I wanted Vince to experience that and see how his music. So I got a Samsung Odyssey and sent it. He's in Sweden, and sent that over to him. And since then, he's been into VR nonstop. And yeah, I'd send him the scene. He'd play it in VR, put his music in, change it a little bit, send it back, and that's been great. Yeah, really good.
okay, well let's talk about your first game. The first game of the studio, Roller Girls from Beyond. This game came out in 2016. So when you started this game, like the idea was 100% VR, or was it like, oh, this will work in flat and VR, or like what was your idea behind starting? Like, why was this the first project?
Yeah, this one I thought, um, I think it was timing too. Like I had the DK2 that you could only use an Xbox controller and you could only sit down, or you could use mouse and keyboard. So this game was made before motion controllers or any touch controller or anything. So it's weird. That definitely changes for me anyway. It was changing the ideas of the types of games I could make, and I didn't know when motion controllers would actually come out. So I'd played a few games like this. I think I played this one that was called, sorry, I can't remember what it was called now, but it was like this girl that walked through this cyberpunk kind of setting over the top of, maybe someone knows what this was called. And,
You know, it's funny, the character, I'm looking at your character. I've actually never played this, if you could believe this. But I'm looking at the character, and you know what it reminds me? You know the Pixel Ripped 1989, you know, like the main character of Pixel Ripped 1989.
oh yeah, yeah,
Like the lady, the developer, like she always dresses up as the character at like trade shows and stuff. And your main character almost looks a little bit like that to me, a little bit, like at certain parts of the game.
yeah. I don't know what's going on with the characters in this one. I'm just basically just making stuff up as I go, sort of thing. Yeah. Um, but it was I started thinking like what if you in VR were a computer, and so you play from this sort of cockpit thing, and you go along, and it's still a side-scrolling it's still a side scroller, and you kind of go left and right with the controller, but then you're the computer actually controlling these roller girls out in front of you. And I didn't realize that would be so hard to do, because you're controlling one thing at a certain range in depth, and then you have a character out here that can run forwards and backwards and up and down, and then there's 4 characters. So all of a sudden there's 5 characters and enemies, and I think it's fun, actually. It's like, I haven't played it for a while, but it's like 52 levels, and it is probably a few hours to get through. And if I were to remake it, I would love to remake it again, because I've learned how to do things in a better way. But I don't know how. I'm not even sure how I did some of the stuff, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, the gameplay, like have you ever heard of this game called Bloody Zombies? It's kind of like a 2D side scroller, but it's in VR. Bloody Zombies.
No, I haven't.
Oh.
No,
It
I
kind of
want to play
reminds
that.
me of that a little bit. I mean, I haven't actually played this, so I'm not sure. But so this game came out, and you know, looking at the trailer here, the Stonepunk Studios logo at the very end there, that's changed quite considerably, right?
Yes.
Your
Yeah, yeah.
Stonepunk, yeah.
Everything's morphing over time, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so when this, like, in terms of sales and stuff, I don't remember hearing too much about this game when it came out. Uh, like marketing, I mean, that's obviously got to be a huge challenge, you know, because you're doing all this stuff, but then like somebody actually has to like get this out in front of the public, let people know about it. Do you think this is a game like, as in terms of the marketing, like I'm sure there's probably a lot of VR players that don't even know that this exists, and it's something that happens in VR gaming because like there are so many games, and you as a developer, I mean, this has got to be a problem in a way. It's almost, I was talking to you yesterday about how everybody and their mom could have a podcast because there's no barrier to entry, right? If you have a
Mm.
phone, you could have a podcast. It's starting to get that way almost in game development as well. The barrier to entry is dropping. There's just millions of games hitting. Like, what was the challenge for you when this game came out to just even have people aware of it?
It's a good question. Yeah, it's something I haven't really been too aware of, actually, because like I play a ton of games myself, and I do search around, and I think, wow, how did I never hear of this game? And this is like my favorite new game, you know, or something. I'm always looking on Steam, or watching the show, or just listening to news stories. Like, when's that game? What's it called? District Steel. When's that coming out? I want to play that. It looks really good. Um, Things like that, you know. I think it's quite tricky. Like, for example, I think maybe only 300 or 400 people might have not only, but have played the Roller Girls game. And I'm not sure at the moment that is really something I'm focusing on. It's more just make something good, like
Just
just
keep
keep,
learning. Just keep learning from it, basically. Just keep moving
yeah,
on. And
yeah.
but Primordian, I mean, like when Primordian came out, a lot of more people knew about that. Do you think that was just the case of it's a
that was,
completely different kind of a game, and maybe it appeals like you look at a trailer like
yeah,
this and somebody might be like, oh, I wouldn't even know that this would be VR, and then
right.
but you see a trailer of Primordian and you're like, oh shit. It's kind of a different kind of a thing, right?
Oh, it's funny. What you just said was the actual first comment on the Roller Girls game was, "This should not be a VR game." Whoever that was, to, and I said, "Sure, maybe it shouldn't, but I enjoyed doing it." So it was more, uh, yeah, Primordial. So, but at that point, actually, Primordial was I told you about, had that big list of all the games I want to make. And they're kind of made in, I decided to do them in order of complexity, so, and technology and stuff. So Primordial was like number two, that I thought it's still going to be hard and challenging, but I think I can figure it out. But the next ones get more and more difficult. But I realized at that point, after making the Roll Girls game, how much work it is. Like, just to do everything by yourself is like, it's a lot of work. And then I thought, that's when it kind of struck me, is that I need to be making ones that I would play. Like, I need to be making a game I would actually play, because that's what's going to keep me going 2 years later, testing the same level for the 4,000th time or something, is that I'm enjoying playing it. And I just love first person shooters and swords and fantasy worlds and sci-fi worlds and things. And so that was really um, how Primordian started. And also I love building environments and things. So it was more uh, creating something in VR that I could walk around with, like a jungle or something, and just enjoy just being there, even if there wasn't a game. Uh, like a world that I felt like I traveled to. But you mentioned about people finding out about the games, and you said that the Primordian had more. That was actually a whole new world that didn't even realize existed. It was such a learning experience. Was actually Paradise Decay was probably, who's right there in chat, was probably one of the first people to put a video out on the game. And when I first released it, and thank you, PD, for when I released the game, I didn't realize there was this whole uh, I actually had been so focused on working, I didn't realize there was this whole thing of people who do YouTube videos, and that I put the game out and I started getting all these emails. Can you send me a copy of the game so I can
Oh yeah,
do a
yeah, yeah.
video? And I thought, sure, like, who's this? Who's this? Yep, yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. And the main reason was, I learned so much from watching someone play it in a video. Like, before putting the game out, there was a guy called uh, Immersive Gamer 83. His name's Wayne, and a really great guy. And this was like for a year before Primordian came out. He had seen a screenshot and he said, oh, I want to play it. And he would make these videos. And I got so much out of watching the videos of like, oh, I never expected someone to do that, or I didn't expect this to happen here, or that would be great if this creature like threw up on you and exploded, or whatever it is. Um, that was I think what changed about my understanding of things, and Primordian coming up was like how Paradise put that the video out, and just watching him play through, and I thought, wow, people are actually enjoying this. Like, I know I'm enjoying it, but everyone else might think it sucks, So to see that was, yeah, was really, really amazing. Yeah, and then I just had a huge batch of I really couldn't keep up. It was like I have to fix the game where it was had this problem, but there's a whole big thing of emails. So I was just happy to send the game to anyone who wanted to play it and make videos I could learn from.
Yeah, that's I well it's interesting that angle you're talking about in terms of like you learning from their videos on how to like it's almost like playtesting, right? It's almost like you're using these
So
guys as playtesters and you're learning from that. But there's also just the awareness, getting the awareness out there. Of course,
yeah,
we're in this like YouTube influencer, yada, whatever. Everybody's an influencer, right? And everybody has a channel here or a website there. As a developer, though, you also have to be careful. Well, I mean, you could just consider it a lost sale or whatever. You're giving away a key. But there's also people that pretend that they're with places. They try to get keys and then they just sell them off. Like they're just straight up, they're just basically trying to scam you to get a little bit of money. Was that something that you kind of noticed a little bit in some of the emails and stuff where people are getting your codes and they're just like selling them off? I mean, I'm sure it's something that all developers have to deal with.
I think so. Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's I would say 50%. You don't know,
Wow.
possibly more, and it's I, I don't really worry about it though. It's just like
It's like whatever, whatever. It's a
whatever,
cost of
whatever.
doing business kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, and it's more like I'm just interested in watching someone play it, So it's more disappointing because I might get an email that says like, you know, I'm interested in the game for this and this reason. I thought, oh, that's good. I'm glad that like this type of game or you love VR and stuff. But then I, it just disappears. So it's yeah, it's
You're able
interesting.
to see though, like, are you able to see later, like, what account that key went into, and to like, I mean, you probably don't care about it at that point,
I
but
think you probably can,
yeah.
but I'm not sure.
So Primordian
Yeah.
released in early January of 2018. When did you actually start working on that?
Oh, I started working on it in 2016, like
Okay.
at the same time as the Roller Girls game, and I started working on the third one at the same time as well because I just like to have a bunch of different
Projects.
ideas going at once. Yeah,
Okay.
and so it was 2 years. It was about 2 years of working on that nonstop, and then since then it's been like all of this year, all of last year as well, and this year. So
Do you worry?
it's
Like, I didn't want to get into this right now, but but we might as well bring it up. Do
may as
you?
well whatever.
Yeah.
Oops.
What I was going to ask is like when it comes like one of the things I've noticed with developers, and you can probably speak to this, is that it's like, okay, so you come out with a game, you're excited, you've got your game, it's your baby, you're very excited about it, you bring the game out, and it comes out into early access. You know what I've said about early access a million times, but it comes out into early access, and people are getting the game, they're buying it, they're playing it, and they're like, oh yeah, I like the game, but it needs more of this, it needs more of that, or I can't wait till there's this level or there's that level. And then as the developer, like you want your fans to be as happy as possible. So you want to give them all these different levels. You want to add all these different things. But then at a certain point, don't you want to just kind of cut the cord and be like, you know what? Okay, this is Primordian. It's done. Anything else is going to be Primordian 2, or I'm going to work on this other game. At what point do you just let Primordian go, but you also feel like you owe it to some of these people because you make all these promises? I mean, it's a complicated thing, right? I mean, I'm sure you're struggling with this at all times.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head pretty much. Yeah, that is it's a struggle because
Actually,
there's
wait,
so
wait, wait. Let me ask you this: if you
yeah.
could go back in time, if you could go back in time, would there be a lot of things that you wouldn't have promised because you've already promised them and now you feel like, ah, damn it, I promised this, I gotta deliver that. Why did I promise that? I want to strangle myself. I shouldn't have promised that.
Um, oh, that's a tough one. Yeah, that's a tough question because there's two parts to that. It's like uh, a lot. I've kind of got to the point where I'm doing this for myself as well, just to like we were talking about, learn how to do it well. I mean, get better at the whole process, um, but also kind of do credit to the original idea. And I know that there's things I want to finish, if you know what I mean. But then, like you said, someone will have an idea about something. That's what's kept me sidetracked a lot. Is like someone will have an idea, and I agree. I'm like, that would be great. Okay, let's do it. Yeah, let's let's put that in. Um, it's hard. Yeah, you're right. You've got to kind of cut it off at some point. Um, and that's not to say that I've been working 100% on Primordian as much as I want to. It's like I have to be doing different things to see, keep myself going as well. So um, I've still been making, two or three other games that I'm trying to get close to bringing out. Um, so with Primordian, yeah, I think it's another learning experience too. It's like I did promise a lot with it, and I want to make sure that all happens, particularly for the people who really supported it. Like it means a lot. Anyone, just that even one person would play it, that means a lot. It's like someone asked if there could be subtitles and localization and an Italian version, and I thought, well, yeah, I guess that would be good. So I'm adding that now, and it's an endless list, like you say. It's like,
See,
but
the problem is you need somebody over you to say,
I need a producer that
yeah,
says, no
this is,
way,
yeah,
no
yeah.
way you can't do that. I have the luxury of doing that now because it's a personal project, and um, that's not going to always happen probably. But why not? Like I figure if you start your own thing, you should do it exactly how you want to do it. Like, uh, why not? Maybe that is the thing. It's whatever it takes. It's not finished till it feels like it, sort of thing.
You
Um,
know what I'll say though,
I
real
don't know.
quick? Oh, go
No,
ahead.
no, that's it.
Oh, well, what I was going to say, just like, okay, me being on the outside, okay, I'm on the outside here. My recommendations for developers, and maybe I'm wrong, like maybe this is bad advice, but my recommendation is under promise, over deliver, and it's okay to have a small 3 hour thing and that's it. And like if let's say Primordian was a 3 hour experience, that's okay. It doesn't have to be an 8 hour experience because here's what I believe. I believe that from a financial standpoint, if you have Primordian as a 3 hour experience, and some people are going to say, oh, it's way too short, it's only 3 hours, yada, yada, yada. But you have this tight interwoven experience that's 3 hours. And then if you really want to do something else, Primordian 2. Because the thing is, if you have Primordian 1 and it costs $20, and people buy Primordian 1, they like it, but now they want all this extra stuff. They want these additional levels. And I feel like you're almost making Primordian 2, but you're giving it to them for free. Where why don't you have Primordian 2 be Primordian 2, and then it's a new 1990 or $24.99, $29.99, whatever. It's a new thing that then has to be covered by all the press outlets. It's a new SKU, you know what I mean? It has a new launch date.
Mm, mm.
Basically what I'm trying to say here is I think way too many developers are trying to do this like everlasting project with one specific game, where I think they would be better off having a bunch of bite-sized things that are their own entity, that have their own press cycle, their own hype cycle. Because once a game is like, Primordian's an incredible game. I love it. It's an awesome game, right? But it's a known quantity. It's out there. Everybody knows about it. And I don't think you're ever going to get like a tremendous amount of press for something that you do to that game until it has Primordian 2. And then it's like, oh, this is Primordian 2. Am I wrong? Am I crazy for saying all this?
No, you're totally right. Yeah, and you're right, but it's also um, yeah, it's are people are taste changing? Is that what you want in it? Is that what people want in a VR game too? Is like I know that I only say play for an hour at the most, half an hour, whatever game I'm playing. Uh, I probably yeah. I think you mentioned this too, and I've heard other people say this in it. Um, is that there's a certain amount of time that an hour is good for me, and I feel like, but that's because I actually usually have a headset on all day anyway, so it's but that's a different thing. Um, but you're right. I I've played some games where I'm like, I played it in 2 hours and I was happy, and that was enough. That I was done, and yeah, I think in the future I definitely need to do that.
Okay,
But
so next game, do not promise like all these extra levels. Keep that a secret. You could because
gotcha.
see the thing is you could always add that later, but if you start making all these like just don't make all the promises is basically what I'm trying to say. Okay,
I
right
I hear
now
you. I need you to be my
business
guy,
advisor, yeah.
business advisor. Yeah, yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah,
Okay,
you're
real
totally.
really quick here. Right now on the screen. Now this isn't going to hit you for another 7 seconds, but oh man. Okay. I went ahead and grabbed a little snippet of it because I cut it out. It looks like Vice City. It's like some project that you might be working on, right? Let me
Oh
go
yeah,
ahead and
yeah.
get the snippet. I'm calling it the Vice City clip, and so I'm gonna pop it on the screen here because this is one of the things I did was just cut this out. So you'll probably see this in a few seconds. But that image right there, oh my God, that looks awesome. I want to be inside that world. I want to be in that world. I hope development of this is continuing somewhere. Do you see what I'm
Can't see
talking
it.
about
I
yet?
can't see it yet. I can
Okay.
see my robot guy moving around
Like
and
a Lamborghini or
ah, yep,
and then it's like pink, like the pink purple, the Vice City. Like I love this look. It's kind of a Tron like a little bit, but it's got
yeah.
that cell shaded vibe.
I love that look. I love the look of those movies and that style of yeah. That like I was mentioning. Always experimenting on making other games because I just want to see what worlds that feel good in VR as well and stuff that I would like. Okay, I see it up on the screen now.
Okay.
Um, yeah, this one I really got into. So I'll spend like a month usually on different games to get them to a certain point because one of my favorite bits is just establishing a look for something. And this one and a lot of this is tied to music too. So I'm usually listening to music as I'm doing lighting and building characters and figuring things out. I was listening to a lot of these mixes for synthwave and retro wave and all of
Yeah.
this great music, really good 80s music and stuff. And then what was there? There was a couple of games. Oh, Hotline Miami and a few
Yeah.
other
Yeah. Yeah.
games. Looking at all those, and I thought, wow, I want a world like this in VR. And so yeah, I built this over a month or so. You can play it. It's a first-person shooter, and it. I'll give you an idea of the game mechanics. It's basically, I love the Max Payne games. So imagine it's this setting with real bright. You get to drive that Lamborghini, and you kind of go through this city, and it's called, I can't remember what I called it. Let me look it up. I've got like 8 of these little projects that are
Yeah.
all, and I kind of put them aside for a while and come back to them and stuff. And that was I still really want to finish this one. It's just time, really. It's really
Yeah.
fun
Like
finding
I
the
would
time.
it's hyper ambitious, right? Because like if you got to make a city that you're actually driving around in, like how much extra complexity does that add to the whole thing?
A lot, yeah. But I think you can do it in ways where it's like if it's a linear storyline and you make it appear that there's a giant city, but you're really just going from this nightclub to this place or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think you can do that. I and you can build yourself some good systems for making cities quickly and stuff. But the idea of this game is that it uses time, uh, pretty much like the Quicksilver scene. I didn't even realize this existed, but it was in I can't remember. My brother showed me the movie after I showed him this game, and he said, "Oh, it's like this." And he showed me the clip from it was that the character called Quicksilver when he pauses time and he moves around the scene and changes things, moves bullets and stuff. And I guess a bit like there's some elements as that, but that's the gameplay, and it's all you can play it already. It actually is kind of fun when you're shooting in first person with these bright glows because I left long trails coming from the weapon, so it becomes like this grid of glows going everywhere. I really want to finish it now.
Yeah. It must be hard because you get all these different ideas, you do these little prototypes, but then you're going to have to dedicate pretty much 2 years of your life, pretty much, right? For each of these things. It's pretty much about 2 years, maybe a little bit less or a little more.
It is, yeah. Unless I find a program where I can, like, I love doing the art side. I'm not a huge fan of, I wouldn't say I'm very good at the programming side or the engineering side, but I've never found anyone to work with. So,
wait a minute, first, if you're not good at this like engineering and stuff, how the hell did you make Primordian? Because like it's a real game, like you're out there, you're moving around. Because when I first, like, one of the things I heard about you is like, oh yeah, he's a former Blizzard artist. And I'm thinking, well, an artist, how is an artist like programming every little aspect of this game? Like, it seems incredible to me, but I guess it's the way game engines are nowadays, right? Like, it's much easier to do this stuff. I still don't really know. What was Primordian? Was that Unity? Is it Unreal Engine? Like, what is that?
It's Unity, actually,
Unity.
yeah.
Okay.
And I've used both. I like Unreal and Unity, but what I prefer about Unity, actually, and I've just used that from now on, is you can strip it back. It starts as a blank canvas, and you can add all these visually. You can do this with Unreal as well. But I just love the ease of being able to drop all of these other things into it, so you can change the way the lighting would look, or you could change cinematic effects. You can create your own ones. It's basically it seems less restricted anyway. So not that Unreal isn't as well. It's hard to explain, but it's more of a less complicated from the outset for me anyway.
Here's a quick question for you. So Primordian, because one of the things I've thought about when it comes to Primordian is I've always said, this is great demo material. Like if you had somebody that came over to your house, a good buddy of yours, they never really played anything VR ever, like put them in the freaking jungle of, that like the intro part where you're walking through, you're looking at the jungle, and like there's like flying insects and stuff, and you got the snakes swirling around, and just that jungle is like freaking really incredible. And so I was thinking, man, this would be a really good short burst thing. Have you ever thought about having like a special arcade version of Primordian? Do some VR arcades, do they license Primordian? Have you looked into, or are they using it illegally? I'm sure there's plenty that are doing that as well. What do you think about the whole VR arcade thing, and the demo, like Primordian as a demo? Because I think it works really well as a demo.
Yeah, I've had that. I've had that on my big list of notes for a year or something. Right at the top, it says make demo, and I just haven't got to it yet.
Or
But
maybe just a arcade specific version of Primordium where it's more designed, because like sometimes when you're like, if somebody that has an arcade, you want an experience that quickly loads up, you could get someone else into it. Sometimes some of these games, it's like the loading screens and everything, it's like you almost need like a special arcade mode where it's like quickly sample, type of thing, for somebody to have like a 25-minute burst experience, 35-minute burst experience.
Definitely. Yeah, yeah. I made a mode called arcade mode that you can go in and play, and it just you play through it. And I want to add more levels, but it's that exactly what you're talking about. It has all the weapons, and you just play through and fight a bunch of enemies. And then I need to build more levels, but at the moment, every time you come through it and start again, it gets faster and faster and faster. So the trick is how many times can you get through it? The most I've got to is 10, which is 10 times the speed, I guess. And it gets ridiculous at the end. But yeah, it's in the arcades in a lot of the VR arcades actually.
Ooh, that looks sweet. I'm
There's
looking at some sci-fi thing that you got. Very neon looking. Homeward. It just showed Homeward, and then it said something after that.
oh
See, I
yeah,
should have. I should have broke. My fault. I should have broke all these little sample things that you've made into small little clips so that I could instantly pop them up, and I didn't do that.
oh no worries. No, I
But
thought
you had another one that was in there. It was called Old Movie Game, and it looked like some black and white movie. That looked really cool. Was
I
that
want to
something
make
you was the whole game going to be looking like a black and white movie, like a widescreen black and white movie from back in the day? That would be a real weird idea.
yeah, yeah, exactly what you said. Yeah, this is why it's kind of frustrating. Is like I have a lot of games to a certain point, and I'm like, I really want to make that one, and I want to complete that one. That one, yeah, it's like a black and white movie, and I was watching. What was the one? What's the one where it's an old black and white movie, and there's like a sea captain. Oh, is it the Ghost of Mrs. Muir or something? Those sort of settings.
Yeah, like an old
But
James Cagney movie or something. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
I just thought, how cool would it be? Exactly what you said, to do like a setting like an old James Cagney movie, or and make it kind of look realistic, it, almost exactly like a film.
Yeah,
It's basically
straight black and white, right? And like
yeah,
1940s, 1950s kind of look.
yes, exactly,
That
and
would
it
be
even
sweet.
have the characters speak like that.
But you need Grand Theft Auto, man. It needs to be an entirely open world that you walk around in. But that would be incredibly difficult.
That's it.
Um, yeah, so Primordian, another thing I've always thought about when it comes to Primordian, I don't know if anybody's ever approached you about this, but what about location-based entertainment? This is something that's also going on in VR. And have you ever thought of creating an experience that would be exclusive to some type of location-based entertainment deal where there is actually like physical it's like a void thing almost.
Oh man,
And
I would love that. Sorry.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, go ahead, you can tell us
No,
about it.
I would totally love that because I went with a bunch of friends to the Void and I played the Star Wars thing. It was cool. Like it didn't. I never thought about that being able to touch the wall that's next to you, and I came home from that thinking I want to make something for that. Like how can I do that? And I remembered there's like a go-kart racing track here close to where I live, and I remember seeing a story about how they put VR headsets onto onto people in the go-kart track, and they'd built like a VR kind of a set for it. And I saw the video of it, and what a great idea! I thought, oh, imagine making racetracks that look like you're going through whatever you want, basically Mario Kart, anything, and putting that onto carts. And that's that sort of stuff you could do in like 2 weeks or a week or something. It's not a 2 year time commitment. So yeah, I find that stuff really exciting. Yeah.
You could probably like as one of the projects that you could think of in the future is a tailor-made location-based see, here's the thing about location-based entertainment, right, is what they want to do is they want to use the smallest amount of real estate possible, right, inside whatever center that they're in, whatever type of like movie theater attraction place that they got. they've got so many square feet. And so what they want to do is they want to have a very small amount of square footage where maybe 4 people at a time could be in this small amount of square footage, and they could have like a 25 to 35 minute experience, and then you move another 4 people in and they have a
Mm.
25 to 35 minute experience, then you move another 4 people in. And the thing is you're thinking of, man, how could I make an immersive thing where people are grabbing things, they're pulling levers, they're turning knobs, they're picking something up, putting it here. All of these items are tracked, or somehow like the wall is the wall. There's a chair, you sit in it. It's a physical chair, you sit in it. And I've been thinking of ideas like that. Like I thought, okay, well, you could have a prison game. Like, think about it. A prison, you're in a jail cell, right? You got a sink, you got a cot, and then you just have to think of, okay, what crazy ass thing could happen to somebody that's in a jail cell where they're
That's horrible.
stuck, and it's like a 25
Oh,
minute experience or whatever. But this is something you could think about because Primordian, I mean, just imagine if there was a Primordian experience that was in a huge ass warehouse where it was Primordian, and you actually had palm trees and stuff, and they were modeled and they were tracked. They could be all made out of like plastics, because like when somebody has the headset on, they don't see how terrible everything looks. It's kind of like if you've ever been
right.
in Magic Mountain, the roller coaster. Like if someone turned on the lights, it would look god awful, but it's in the dark and everything works. And so in VR, like everything could be made out of like freaking particle
Like,
board or whatever, but you have the physical stuff there. You have knobs, you have dials. Have you ever, like, has that ever entered your mind about like, what if I just made like a location based experience? Because you could license that. Like, people are gonna want stuff like that. Has anybody ever contacted you? Somebody tried Primordian, they're like, man, we tried Primordian, have you ever thought about like a location based entertainment thing where you're in a crazy jungle? I mean, I don't know how you do all this, but
no, I, no one's contacted me, but I would totally do it if they did. It fascinates me as well. Like you kind of listed off all those possibilities and things you could do. Wouldn't it be fun though? Like to actually, it's different because when you're constantly playing games or making them in a kind of fictional, a made up space that doesn't exist, but you could actually possibly transfer that to a real world and touch things just like you said. It's that would be really exciting, yeah. And it's the sort of thing I think you'd have to go to the places, or they would have to map it out in 3D and be able to send you kind of a exact one-to-one replica of the place. But then, and then you can build around that, and as long as it's to scale, they should be like you, in theory, should be able to do your own house or whatever in that way, and that'll be. I'm sure a lot of that's going to happen in the future anyway. Where did you showed that clip a while ago where the Microsoft experimental stuff where the guy was walking through the mall and it would change a room to here's the boss room, or if it was a big enough room, or here's this. I thought that was pretty amazing. I think that's going to become uh, maybe it's 5 years off or 10 years or whatever, but there's the Oculus thing I saw as well where
like the dead
it
and
basically
buried,
yeah
arena scale.
yeah that and the one where they took a room and with the cameras remapped the surfaces of what's in the room to something else, like it became crates and boxes, and if it was a wall it became like a concrete slab and things like that. um, Imagine the potential of that though when it gets built in automatically into a system to be able to remap the look of any space that you're in. I think some of that will come down to um, that will obviously be need to be made by people, but this can some of it can be procedural where it could be it's everything's covered in jungle and flowers mode, or it's whatever mode it is. But
Raindrops, all kinds of
yeah,
stuff. No.
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
it's
Prison,
funny though. Check this
your
out.
prison idea. So that's your prison idea is pretty terrifying. Like I think that would be more of a horror game, wouldn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking
Yeah.
paranormal, like it's like psycho things that are grabbing on your bars and stuff and,
Ah,
all kinds of crazy stuff. But one thing I was thinking too, like a location based, I was thinking of like what if there was a location based place you went to, right? And they're like, "Okay, this experience requires you got to wear shorts and no socks." So you got to have bare feet because here's the thing, you're going to be walking over sand, gravel, and you're going to be walking in water up to your ankles. And it's all part of the VR experience. So it's like you're in a VR world where there's sand there, because I'm trying to think,
that's
how are you
cool.
going to immerse people? Like I'm thinking immersion, 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 and it's like, well, what is going to immerse? Like these are all things that need to be tested. They need to be tested in labs. I'm sure they're doing it at Facebook Reality Labs. That's why I want to go to the Willy Wonka. Give me the Willy Wonka ticket so I can go to the
Mm,
Facebook Reality Labs because I got to imagine you got to just test all of this stuff and you got to find out, okay, what truly is immersive and what isn't as immersive as we would think it would be. Because I'm thinking if I was walking around on my bare feet, right? You're walking on sand, like you really are walking on sand. And in the experience, you're walking on sand. I would think that, like, our lizard brain, like it's like, oh, these things are connecting. I'm walking on sand in VR and I'm walking on sand in real life. This is an extra bonus. Okay, now
mm,
I'm
mm.
walking on gravel or something. Now my foot just went into water and I'm in water in the VR experience, and the water's maybe only going up 7 inches or whatever, but I feel the water and I'm looking down and I'm in water. And so, but I don't know, maybe you do all of that stuff and maybe it's like, oh, it's kind of a bonus, but it doesn't add that much immersion. But somebody's got to figure all this stuff out. I guess the Void, Disney, Universal Studios, I got to imagine places like this are trying to figure this stuff out, right?
Mm. Like, and where does it end too? Like, how much is enough for that? It's I've only tried the Void, but they did some stuff with heat and I think there's moisture as
Wind,
well. Like,
yeah.
yeah, and there were little bit drops that sprayed on you. But when I walked past this one thing and it was all this heat. Oh, you go out into a lava or something, um, and it was really hot. And I just thought, wow, that's amazing. That's what's fascinating, isn't it? What all the technologies that will spring up around VR and that are happening now, I'm sure everyone's working on, is where will they be in 10 years or 20 years?
But
What
this
is
is
a lot?
something like your company, or I mean, anybody's company. I guarantee you, there's a few companies out there that are like, we're not going to make games for Steam. Forget that. We're going to make a game for a freaking location based entertainment center. We're going to make a specialized thing that operates in a 20 by 20 foot area where you're in this room. There's all these like there's got to be people that are doing that. It's just another way to go about it, because what I think long term, here's the thing, we're all going to have VR at home. Everybody's going to have VR at home. I even believe like 20 years from now, you go shopping for a new home, right, at these new developments, and instead of having a bonus room, they're going to have a VR room where it's just a 30 by 30 foot room where it's like perfect for VR and AR exploration. It's going to be a thing.
Mm,
But then I also believe these location based entertainment centers, they're going to be a thing too, because they're going to be able to do what you can't do in your own house, or what's impractical. I mean,
mm,
it's impractical for you to like build. Have you ever seen that game?
mm.
There's a game, it's called New Retro Arcade Neon, where you're like playing old arcade games. And have you seen that one at all?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I haven't played that, but I've seen it. Yeah.
Because somebody could create that, and I can't believe this hasn't been done, and maybe somebody's doing it right now as we speak. But new retro arcade neon, like how hard would it be? I can't imagine this would be hard at all for you to make like say that wall over there, right? Okay, so what if that wall was like plywood or particle board or whatever, but it was made into a facade of arcade cabinets, but there's nothing in the arcade cabinets. There's no screen in the arcade cabinets, but there's buttons. There's the knobs. And so you're physically walking around like you have an Oculus Quest. This would work perfectly fine with an Oculus Quest, right? You're wireless. And from a graphical standpoint, you've seen it with a number of VR games. You put an old CRTV into a VR game with a low resolution thing running on the CRT, and it looks like real freaking life. Like we can actually do that because it's so low res and it's so, it's like old school arcades like Centipede, Pac-Man or whatever. You could walk along the wall and you walk up to this arcade game. It's Centipede. You're playing it. The buttons are there. The trackball is there. So what somebody would have to do is the trackball, the buttons, all of that would have to be wired to go back to the computer to know that, okay, this person walked up to Pac-Man. Now they're playing Pac-Man. This person walked over to Missile Command. Now they're playing Missile Command. But like physically, you should be able to walk around this arcade. Like within 10 years, I should be able to go somewhere and I can freaking enter a 1980s arcade and it should be freaking flawless, man. And they don't need to have any of the cabinets or any of the monitors or any of the innards. It would all be virtual, but they could have the facade of it. So I feel it. Like I'm standing at the pinball and I'm playing pinball. I feel it. But it's just a facade. It's all fake. It's all, and then even having a multiplayer experience where it's tracking other people that are in the arcade so you don't bump into them. Like you're actually in a 1980s arcade, but you're not in a 1980s. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Wouldn't that be amazing though? But I wonder how much are we going to do, like haptics and so on, like where is that headed? It's probably not, if it's not 10 years, if it's 20 years, where it's, who knows, I have no idea, but like if it's basically directly direct input to your nervous system. So you reach for something and you feel it. So you don't have to be at the arcade, you're just at your house. But
yeah, do you believe...
touch that stick and then you touch this and you're feeling it and you move somewhere else and you touch that, but you're actually touching... I mean, that is the logical next progression, right? That you have to be able to touch these worlds that can be made now. Like you get some sort of buzzy thing, but that's currently not. That's currently where we're at, right? But it's got to be some sort of nervous system input or something that we get to. Yeah.
But do you think that's actually going to happen in our lifetimes?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure in lifetime or not, but I know I'm pretty. I think it will happen. Though.
If I was 10 years old, I would say, yeah, it's going to happen in my lifetime. But I'm not 10 years old. I don't know.
That's why I had to think about it. Yeah. I was like, well, if I was like, 15 or 20 or something, maybe, who knows? Maybe in 5 or 10 years, someone's. I'm sure people are already working on this stuff anyway, but it's fun to speculate.
Yeah,
because you have to think about the progression of where all this goes, and there's all the little signs already of like, and it's so obvious. You put on the headset and you're like, I need to feel everything, I need to be there, and I need to. And the scary part is, I think the eventual progression of that is once we have all those things in place, the final thing will be forgetting who you are. That's what, or where you are. That's what's going to stop you from complete immersion.
Do you think people...
So remember, I'm still in my house, so maybe you're going to take some tablet that lasts for half an hour so you totally forget who you are and you're actually fully in this world. Yeah.
Wow.
Interesting stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if, like, when that actually happens, when we get to that point, I think more and more people are going to come to the realization that the reality that we're in right now, how real is this? Like, how real is this? because if we can make a facsimile of this, if we can recreate this, then how real is what we're in right now? Are we in a simulation within a simulation within a simulation? Look, I know this is like, okay, you've been smoking too much of whatever, right?
Oh no, I think about this stuff all the time too. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. And
It's quite scary. It's like the more you think about that stuff, you realize that if that's where we're heading, and if that's where the technology is going, then it's exactly what you just said, and it's quite interesting to think maybe we have already done this, and we're just doing it over and over and over. That's when, yeah.
yeah, this is a true roguelike. This is the true roguelike where you're literally living an entire life in a video game, and then when you die, you get to take it off. And it was like, oh, was that a good 80-year video game that you just played? But yeah,
Exactly.
it's crazy because I think if you went back to the 1980s and you asked, you polled like 1,000 people, are we living in a simulation? And if you did that in the 1980s, like 2% would maybe say, yeah, maybe we're in a simulation. 98% would say no. But I think if you
Yes.
do it in 2040, the answers are going to be way the hell different because people are going to be like, maybe we are because they freaking are recreating reality right here. So pretty,
Yeah, exactly.
pretty crazy.
It's everything we just talked about. When I started thinking about that as well, I think even if you did that poll now, it would be pretty high. It would be a lot higher, even if it wasn't 2040. Even now, the concept of this, depending on who you're speaking to, I guess. But um, yeah, I could talk about this stuff for ages. But one thing I realized what you described about, is this a simulation, and then are we recreating that simulation, and where will the technology end up, is that concept. That's the first time I could actually understand the concept of something that's infinite, or infinity, or that symbol where you've got the infinity loop. That's such an impossible concept to grasp until you think about something like we just spoke about, where the process is recreating up to a certain point.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's
Yeah, yeah.
very crazy. I just was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast, I think, and he was talking to Elon Musk, and they were talking about, the simulation argument and base reality and all that stuff. It really is pretty fascinating. But you know what?
It
We've been
is. Yeah.
going for a very, very long time. But here's the good news. The good news is I've got a million more questions to ask you, so we can do another show because, like we didn't really talk about Oculus Quest. We didn't talk about the current VR headsets we have now, should we try to go mainstream with VR? Should it be cheaper, wireless, untethered? There's just a million different things we could talk about, right? But we only have so much time. But Jay, it was awesome having you. I definitely want to have you back on and get into all this stuff again, maybe like a month from now or so. We don't have to do it right away. But that's what I was thinking, is there's no way we're going to get to everything on this episode. And I definitely have, there's more Primordian things I can talk about. There's more the business side, like viability of being an indie developer and trying to make ends meet. There's a million
Mhm.
different angles we can take this. So we'll definitely have to come back and do it again. But I definitely had fun with this. I'm starting to get very starving, though. I'm sure you're probably hungry over there as
I
well,
bet.
because we're both on the West Coast, the best
Yes,
coast.
that's what I was going to say. Thank you so much for the show and for having me on. It was really fun. It was awesome just to chat, and I'm happy to come back anytime. And hey to everyone in chat too. And I'm sorry if any of it was boring. I tend to ramble a bit, but yeah, I'm happy. I would love to come back anytime. Yeah, we're both on the same coast. Yep. Um,
Absolutely. So yeah, we'll definitely get you back on, and it'll probably be, Valve Index will be available. The Quest will have,
Yes, I
well,
can't wait.
maybe, I don't know, maybe it'll be available. The Quest will have been out, and so many other interesting things that we can talk about. So we'll definitely do that again. So this is just the first of probably several different interviews we'll have. So that'll be cool. But yeah, Jay, thanks so much, and absolutely, we'll be doing it again.
Thanks, Anthony. Yeah, enjoy your Sunday too. I know you said you can't relax until all your show is done and everything. I've heard you say that on different episodes. Now you can
Yeah,
eat and relax.
absolutely. I'm looking forward to that. I really am. I'm also looking forward to jumping in some VR and playing. I've been playing this game, Boiling Steel, which is it needs major work on the story. I think they're Russian developers, and they need somebody that is an English writer that knows sci-fi. But it's pretty cool. There's just VR is just so cool, man, because you're going into these other worlds, and you can lose yourself for a little. Like as prehistoric as it is right now, we're in the Atari 2600 days of VR. And as prehistoric as it is, you can still lose yourself for like 10 minutes of time and like forget where you're at and like really get enraptured in the experiences. So, like, Primordian was one of those games. I lost myself in Primordian for brief windows of time.
That's awesome. Wow, it's so good to hear too. That's actually why I called the company Stonepunk too. Is I feel like a caveman with the technology, just hitting against something that I know is a lot more complex. Like you said, it's interesting. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and say bye. I'm gonna go ahead and hang up on you, Jay. Great talking with you, but absolutely, I'll get in touch with you offline, and we'll plan to do this again, probably in another
Awesome.
month or so.
Awesome. Thanks, Anthony.
Okay, take it
See you,
easy.
everyone.
Bye bye. Okay, that was Jay from Stonepunk Studios. All right, let me go ahead and turn this here. Well, yeah, this has been a marathon episode of our show. Let me see, what is the runtime at? Hold on, I got to see what our runtime is. Let me go ahead and minimize all this other stuff. Wow, 1 hour and 51 minutes. Wow, this has been one of the longest episodes for sure, especially after I already did a VR Roundtable earlier today. So this is like one of those double headers. This is one of those baseball games where you play a double header, but both of them are like extra innings and just like forever. That's kind of what it's like. But yeah, this one is finally over with. I will be back tomorrow on Monday, probably 4 p.m. Pacific time for Monday's episode. Not sure if I'll be having a guest or not, but we're definitely going to be talking about Valve Index, Oculus Quest, Rift S, basically on the eve of the arrival of all these things. So that's going to be pretty exciting. So looking forward to that. So I will see everybody tomorrow around 4 p.m. Pacific time. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. Play some VR games and have some fun. Do some of that, right? All right. I'll see you guys. Take it easy. Later.